Hey, greetings. I'm Bryan Catherman. This is Robbie Tschorn, and we are talking about worship matters because we're going through this with the worship team, right?
With the worship team, yep.
This is by Bob Kauflin, published by Crossway, and we are on Chapter 5, My Life. What do I model?
What do I model?
Hey, let me ask you a question to get us into this.
Yeah.
You told me once you haven't been to a lot of concerts.
Yeah.
I've been to a ton of concerts, but just imagine, you can put yourself at a concert, I'm sure. Imagine you go to a huge show. It's really cultural, and let's say it's a Rasta. Are you into Rasta music? I'm really not, but let's just pretend for this.
But yeah.
Let's pretend for this. Really cultural.
Yeah.
It's the next Bob Marley or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And they're all from Jamaica, and they've got the thick accents, they got the bright colors, the dreadlocks, the whole thing.
Whole shebang. Okay.
The whole shebang, right? And it's an amazing show, and they crush it, and they talk about how much they love their country, and they play the music, and they grew up on all this music, and it's just all amazing.
Okay.
You're leaving, you and your wife, and you're like, man, that was so awesome, and you happen to be going back around kind of behind where they're loading up all the gear outside, and you see all those guys, and suddenly they're taking off their wigs, their accents are gone, and suddenly you realize they're just all from Detroit.
Yeah.
How do you feel in that moment?
I'd feel lied to, betrayed.
How do you think Jamaica would feel in that moment?
Oh man, they'd be livid.
Those aren't our people.
Yeah, by no means.
Right?
Yeah.
You're a fraud. How do you think God feels in that moment when our worship teams do that, and maybe not that drastic of a way, but spiritually, morally? People are on stage on Sunday worshiping the Lord, and then all throughout the week, they're not living for Him, talking about Him, thinking about Him, praying. It's a musical act. Maybe they're in tremendous rebellion to God. Maybe they're in tremendous sin. That's not uncommon in churches across the land.
Right.
That's a bad deal, right?
Yeah, it's terrible.
So this is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're talking about what we model. What really stuck out for you in this? Where would you like to start?
Oh man, I mean, it's how he opens the book. I'd say the book, the chapter. Page 44 is to set the believers an example. I think that's key. I think we talked in our last video about how the worship team. I mean, that's the AV guys. That's those who are on the platform.
Well, let's put some definition to that.
Sure.
So the worship team is everybody on the platform, because the whole Sunday is an act of worship.
Right.
And so me as the lead pastor and our elders, they're the worship leaders ultimately.
Yeah, ultimately.
But you're talking about the music team who are leading in worship as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all those people.
That's good. Yeah. So you have all those folks. They are setting an example. Like they really do. Like the congregation. Maybe it's unfair, but the congregation does look at them differently.
It's not that it's unfair. It's precedent, because Paul said, "Follow me as I follow Christ." And then even in that on page 44, he sends a letter. Paul, the apostle, sends a letter to Timothy, and he charges Timothy to set an example.
Set an example.
And that's just how it is. Follow me as I follow Christ. And I think a lot of our musicians and our sound crew think I'm here to push a button or turn the live stream on or something. And in fact, the church does see them differently.
Right.
Why do you think that is? Why does the church see them differently?
I mean, they're being entrusted to participate in the worship in a way that they're not. Like, so I don't want to say that. I mean, so the congregants, like our congregation are members.
So you got 100 people sitting in here watching 4 people lead or 5 people lead.
Yeah.
How come all the other 100 people aren't? Well, because they were entrusted with that call.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I hope people see it as a calling.
Yeah.
They've been tasked by God, hopefully through the church, to do that thing.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity that's been given to those who are on the platform to, like we talked about in the last video, like with skill, to take what's been given to them and like take that seriously, enhance that skill, grow that skill, etc. But with that comes what Bob lays out here. We set an example for the church. He goes on. He says,
and represent the church.
He says, in speech, in conduct, in purity, in love, in faith. There's just all different topics that he goes through and such. But like they really do. Those who are on the platform, from the preacher to the guys back in the AV booth as well. Like I mean, everyone holds like I said, a different. Like the congregation has a different eye on them.
They see them differently.
And they
It goes all the way back to, I think, on the first page. Leading worship starts with the way I live my life, not with what I do in public. It's inconceivable for us to see ourselves as worship leaders if we're not getting attention to what we do every day. And so even if you're normally on the platform, let's say we have somebody who plays every other week, church still watches how they're handling their children on the Sunday when they're not on the platform, or what they say in the lobby, or what they're doing. Are they worshiping? I mean, I've seen circumstances over the many years of ministry where the people who are leading the worship then the next Sunday aren't themselves even hardly singing or participating.
Oh, goodness,
like, you're not willing to participate when you're a part of the choir or you're in the congregation singing to the Lord, but you are when you're leading, which is a really eye-opening situation, right?
Yeah, and I've had a worship leader tell me in the past, it's been a long time since I talked with this fellow, but he said that he can't worship unless he's leading worship.
Which, that's just
an
ill-conceived reality. Because here's what we're doing. So the whole church is on the worship team.
Right.
The whole church is the choir.
That's true.
And the people on the platform are the choir leader, and the audience is the Lord. And so on top of that, you're not just being seen by the church. You're not modeling for the church what you should be doing and modeling. You're not saying, follow me as I follow Christ only. You are saying that to the church. But you're also saying, Christ, we're singing to you, and he knows you inside and out. And if you're the one taking off your Rasta wig and changing your accent, he knows, right? So there's a lot more to this than just, I play music. You know, I push the buttons in the sound booth. And you represent the church. So imagine social media, okay? And you think about this, and you said it in the beginning of the video, it doesn't seem fair, but it's part of the responsibility of leading the bride of Christ. And so throughout the week, your social media does nothing to represent Jesus well. You know, it's horrible and disparaging against others and cussing, and you're posting weird, horrible things that the church would never be okay with on Sunday. So if we were to put your social media feed up on Sunday and let everybody see how it went on the week, what would the church think? Or as Josiah has said it here, he says, you know, if what you did during the week, or if the outcome of this particular thing were on the front page of the local paper, would you be okay with that? And if you'd be embarrassed or shocked or whatever, well, that's a real issue. That's really this inauthentic modeling, whether it be in speech, your conduct, what were the categories? Love, faith, purity. I mean, that's a big deal. And we hear stories of this all the time. I mean, that's taken out some really major servants of the Lord. Whether they're servants or not is debatable, but where all of a sudden the story comes out that they're not faithful like they are on Sunday the rest of the week. Or they're having an affair, or they're doing this, or they're doing that. And I've actually had that in my ministry, where people who've been leading on stage were actually in egregious sin, egregious, while they're leading people. And here's the situation: it's not just they're leading people; it's that the Lord is in the congregation as the audience, an audience of one, going, you are a hypocrite. Now, we're all hypocrites. Let's be really clear. We're all sinful. We all need Jesus. But to say, I'm going to not be cognizant of that, I'm just going to reject all that and put on a fake front and think I can get away with it, not forever. That's what this chapter is about. What do you and then how are you leading the congregation to do the same? So do you think our crew, even yourself, like, do we really have that in our head most weeks? I don't think so. Not that it's a bad thing. Like, even as the preacher, sometimes we're like, oh man, I'm modeling for everybody what it is to worship, what it is to fellowship with others in the lobby, and what it is to do this as a church. I need to be able to say, follow me as I follow Christ. And when I'm not preaching, I like being here if I can be, and sitting under the preaching of Josiah or you or others, and or Mike, and going, okay, this is good. I can still actively engage in this, not just for myself, but to show the congregation. Even preachers need preachers. Even worship leaders need worship leaders. It's a big deal.
It's very true.
All right, what else you got in here? Sorry, that's
great. That's great. He says at the bottom, I don't think you just hit this. Maybe you did. I don't think you did. The bottom of page 46, it says, in faith, every Sunday morning, I'm seeking to point people to God. My role isn't to direct people's eyes to me, but to the God in whom I trust. The primary way I do that is by making sure I'm looking to God myself.
Yes.
And I think there's a huge implication of that, of what you're talking about. What does your daily worship look like throughout the week? Are you setting an example outside of the church?
Well, so this is the challenge. I'm nervous to put this to the worship team, not just our team, any worship team.
Sure.
I'm nervous to put this to almost anybody serving in the church.
Yeah.
You're serving, you're in children's ministry, and you're teaching kids the Bible lesson. Have you read the whole Bible yourself? Did you read and study this lesson this week? What's your spiritual growth? Or are you just barely ahead, just getting the lesson and that's it? With the music team, do you know where you could find scripture that supports these lyrics? Do you know if this is actually accurately representing the gospel or not? I mean, we talked about
you challenged me on a lyric the other day.
Lyric. I'm like, wait, is that theologically true? We don't need to get into all that, but that's a good point. It's not heresy, but what do we think when we sing that? Right. Oh, interesting.
What could be stronger here?
How could we do this differently? It's not necessarily it's bad or good, but what does the Bible say? And it was like, oh,
right.
Well, it's a great line, and I want that to be true, but no, the Bible doesn't quite make it say that.
Right.
And so, having a knowledge of the Bible, for example, means that you're walking in your understanding and knowledge. It's not just about singing the lyrics.
Right.
Serving others and participating. Like I've challenged a few people over the years of ministry, deacons or pastors or people who will do the prayer over the offering. Say it's going to be really pretty silly if you don't give at all and you're asking the church and you're praying. Maybe I'm not going to ask you what you give necessarily, but if you stand up here and you say, hey, this is an act of worship and this is what we do, are you doing it? Are you saying follow me as I follow Christ? Or are you, if everybody knew, I once heard, I think it was in my doctoral work, it's Jeff Orch. I'll give credit where credit is due. He says, you know what? At any point when you're asking people to serve, when you're asking people to give, when you're putting that ask out there, you better ask yourself, if everybody did it like I do it, everybody, what would it look like in the church? And it's a really helpful way to go, if everybody served at the extent that I serve, if everybody gave, or if everybody sang and worshiped, if some people were to answer that question, there'd be no sound.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well, they've got it covered. So I think the idea is when you're on the worship team and you're in front of everybody, you're asking everybody, come sing with me and come love the Lord with me. And the line you just read is, you're looking to God yourself. Come look to God with me.
Yeah.
The
encouragement in this is like, okay, if you're not, it's not too late. I heard a quote not long ago.
Start today.
Yeah, I heard a quote not long ago that went along the lines of, when's the best time to plant an apple tree?
Right.
Like 20 years ago. Right?
When's the second best time?
When's the second time? Today.
Right?
Start, right?
Yep. Do something.
Yes, do something about it. And so if you're not in that boat of, okay, you're not doing a good job of actively looking to God on a constant or consistent basis and such, like, okay, start looking to God.
Time to start.
Yeah, exactly.
Time to start. Hey, so Robbie, this is about to shift gears. We've gone through chapters 1 through 5.
Yep.
That's about the person, the character, where your heart is, your dedication to practicing and developing and growing. We're about to move into the task, which gets into a lot more of the mechanical pieces in some ways, not all of it. What is it that is happening? But before we do that, this is about the leader. I've had some pushback from folks just in going through the book here and there that this isn't for them, this is just for you. Well, what would you say to the folks who are, we've been talking about it a lot, but this just gives you an opportunity to really speak to that. Well, I just push buttons in the sound booth. I'm just playing the triangle. I think we said that in the last video. I'm just a musician. What would you say to that based on what we've just read in these 48 pages?
And the question again is, it's not, it's just for the worship leader, not everyone else.
Not for everyone on the team, just for Robbie. He's the leader.
Sure. Yeah. I think maybe it was earlier in this video or the last video, but we talked about how if you're on the stage in general, it's a calling. And I believe like even if you didn't hear a voice from the Lord, you didn't see a burning bush, but you have the talent, you're up there, okay, or you're in the AV booth, there is a calling there. And so, yeah, it may use, I think even part 1 of this book says the worship leader. Okay. I want us to look beyond that to like looking at, okay, yeah, it's not just for the worship leader. There are so many nuggets in here that I've heard from you. I've heard from like Pastor Josiah is getting, like, he loves this book. He loves like a lot of what is going on here. And I just want to encourage, as going through this, if maybe you've asked that question, or that now we're prompting that question for you.
You're thinking about it now.
Yeah, now you're thinking about it. Don't think about chocolate cake. And here, now we're thinking about chocolate cake. No, this book, I believe, it's for everyone, because again, it's not about, it's helping the worship leader for sure, but the whole point of the book, worship matters, right? It's trying to help those who are part of the team, and I think help those who are part of the team understand why we do what we do. And if anything, you're let's say you play the guitar on the side, or you play drums, or maybe you're an AD guy. You're able to get into the mindset of just seeing what is the call, I guess, looking at what should a worship leader be thinking about? What should we all be thinking about? Because it doesn't end with the worship leader.
Right.
Yeah, the guy who's on stage playing guitar, yeah, great. Or in our context, yeah, great, cool. But I'd love for our entire team to be thinking in these terms.
Well, I think since you say that, I'll just share, this really is capturing the ethos of what the elders at Redeeming Life Church believe our worship needs to look like. And this is a huge part of the task we've given you, to say, we need our team to look like this. We need those in the congregation singing and praising to look like this. We need our worship to look like this. And so it's not necessarily that Bob Kauflin has all the answers,
right,
but his approach and view lines up extremely well with how we're seeing what we need our worship to be and desire our worship to be at Redeeming Life. So it's really helpful to go through this in that way.
Yeah.
And so those first 5 chapters, I believe, have been incredibly helpful, just talking about the person and personhood and the character of the person. And so I just hope that you're journeying along with the book. I hope this conversation's helping, and who knows, maybe we'll go through this again, or we'll go through it with the whole church, or we'll go through it with the next volunteers that are coming on, or whatever happens.
Yeah.
I hope that this has just been a really helpful journey as we're getting ready now to move into the task, which is part 2. What are we actually doing, and what's there? I think that'll prompt a lot of fascinating conversation.
And what we just kind of hit on, or you just posed, question, or chapter 6 is on what does a worship leader do? And
now what?
Yeah,
you figured out who you are. Now
yeah,
what?
if you jump ahead and you're reading that, view that through the lens of, okay, though I'm not a worship leader, what can I do with this information? I believe this is going to give us its health.
That's right.
Get us to a healthy place.
I do think that's the answer. Is this is helping us think about worship, worship leading, what we're doing on a Sunday, what's happening throughout the week, what's supposed to be happening, so that we can do it in a biblically healthy way. I think it's been a good journey. Hey, thanks for discussion on that chapter. I look forward to our next chapter.
Thank you. Yeah.